stop what you're doing right now, seriously. Pause everything, sit down, and lock in, because what's happening inside the Indiana Fever front office is turning into a real-time, high-stakes lesson in the unforgiving reality of modern sports business. This is not just basketball anymore. This is economics. This is power. And this is exactly what happens when an organization forgets one of the most basic rules of corporate capitalism. You never, under any circumstances, bite the hand that feeds you, because here's the truth the Fever are being forced to confront in real time. The fan base they thought belonged to the franchise actually belongs to Caitlin Clark, and right now those fans are making their stance crystal clear. They are not passive, they are not quiet, and they are not forgiving. They are sending a message, loud, direct, and financially impactful, that if the organization even appears to mishandle their generational superstar, they will respond in the only language billion-dollar sports businesses truly understand. Money, engagement drops, ticket narratives shift, public pressure builds, and suddenly what looked like a basketball decision turns into a full-blown business crisis. Welcome back to Court Central. This is the one place where the reality of professional basketball is not filtered, softened, or dressed up for comfort. There's no PR spin here, no protecting narratives, no access-driven silence. We break down the truth, the business side, the tactical decisions, the coaching philosophies, and the high-stakes financial ecosystem that drives the WNBA. And right now, the Fever are entering what can only be described as the find-out phase of their 2026 offseason, because every action has consequences. Every decision has a ripple effect, and when those decisions involve a player like Caitlin Clark, the margin for error disappears completely. This situation is escalating fast, and it's getting uglier by the minute. So if you want the full, unfiltered breakdown of everything happening behind the scenes, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is far from over.
You're over being called a racist? Just that quick. Interesting. Okay. Must be nice. I don't get down. I'm not forgiving that. Okay. That's not going to happen. So, and never mind the logistical.
To truly understand just how massive this mistake could be, you have to zoom out and analyze the full macroeconomic reality surrounding the Indiana Fever, because this is not just about frustrated fans venting on social media. This is not just noise from Twitter or Reddit. What we are witnessing is something much bigger, a fundamental, almost seismic shift in the balance of power between a professional sports franchise and its consumer base. The Fever are no longer operating like a traditional franchise. They have become, whether they admit it or not, a Caitlin Clark-driven enterprise, and the data makes that reality impossible to ignore. Before Caitlin Clark arrived, the Fever were barely part of the national conversation. They were sitting near the bottom of the standings. Attendance numbers were among the lowest in the league. Ticket distribution was a struggle. National visibility was minimal. For the average sports fan, the team simply did not exist on the radar. Then everything changed. The moment Caitlin Clark entered the picture, the entire ecosystem flipped overnight. Suddenly, arenas across the country were selling out. Demand surged so dramatically that games had to be relocated to larger NBA venues just to accommodate the crowds. Merchandise sales exploded instantly, jerseys flying off shelves within hours. Television ratings climbed. Media coverage intensified. The Fever transformed from an afterthought into the centerpiece of the WNBA. That kind of transformation is not incremental. It's historic, and it all traces back to one player. So when a fan base that is deeply invested, emotionally, financially, and culturally, sees the organization use a first-round pick on Raven Johnson, the reaction is not mild disappointment. It's explosive, because this is not happening in a vacuum. There is context here, real history that shapes how fans interpret this move. The connection between Raven Johnson and Caitlin Clark goes back to the 2023 Final Four, a moment that went viral across the basketball world. Clark famously backed off Johnson at the three-point line, daring her to shoot, a gesture that instantly became symbolic and fueled a narrative of rivalry between the two. But the tension didn't stop on the court. Leading into this draft, Raven Johnson made headlines off the court as well, appearing on a widely discussed podcast where she openly criticized a segment of Caitlin Clark's fan base, labeling them as toxic, calling out bullying behavior, and even raising serious accusations. Now, whether people agree or disagree with those comments is not the central issue here. From a pure basketball standpoint, standpoint, debates are expected. From a social standpoint, opinions will always vary. But from a business and public relations perspective, this is where the situation becomes complicated. Because when you are running a professional sports franchise, especially one whose recent growth is so tightly connected to a specific player and her fan base, you have to be acutely aware of perception. You have to understand your audience. You have to know who is buying the tickets, who is driving engagement, who is investing emotionally and financially into your product. And that's where the criticism of this decision comes into play, because from a strictly corporate lens, using a premium draft asset on a player who has recently been at odds publicly with a portion of your most engaged and paying audience introduces risk, significant risk. It creates tension where unity is needed. It invites controversy where stability is expected, and it shifts the narrative away from basketball success toward off-court conflict. That's not just a basketball decision anymore. That's a branding decision, a marketing decision, a business decision. And when those decisions are not aligned with the realities of your audience, the consequences can escalate quickly. That's why this reaction feels so intense, because for many fans, this is not just about roster construction. It feels like a direct collision between the franchise and the very audience that helped elevate it. And in professional sports, that is a dangerous place to be.
In 4 letters. Hopefully Snoop Dogg doesn't come for that. Wow. So they went on social media asking for you to buy tickets as a consumer of their product. Woo! The
drafting of Raven Johnson was only the initial spark. The real explosion came moments later when Stephanie White stepped up to the microphone during the draft press conference and unintentionally poured gasoline all over an already volatile situation. The backlash is not just about the pick itself, it's about the messaging that followed and how damaging it sounded to a fan base already on edge. When asked about how the guard rotation would function, Stephanie White had a clear opportunity to calm the narrative, to reinforce structure, and to reassure fans about the offensive hierarchy of the Indiana Fever. Instead, her response did the exact opposite. She began by describing veteran Ty Harris as a combo guard, then stated that Caitlin Clark is someone who can operate both on and off the ball. She followed that by labeling Raven Johnson as a true point guard who is most effective with the ball in her hands. And then, to escalate the situation even further, she concluded by saying that this new guard depth would allow Kelsey Mitchell to get more rest. That sequence of statements might sound harmless on the surface, but when you actually slow it down and analyze it from a tactical and strategic standpoint, it becomes incredibly revealing. At no point did she clearly establish the one thing that matters most. She never definitively said that Caitlin Clark is the undisputed starting point guard and the central engine of the offense. Instead, what she described was a system built around shared responsibilities, a rotation where the ball is distributed in a way that potentially limits Clark's control. And that is exactly where the concern explodes, because what was subtly implied is a vision where one of the most dynamic offensive creators in modern basketball is asked to shift off the ball to accommodate a defensive-first rookie and a role-playing veteran. That's not just a minor adjustment, that's a fundamental philosophical shift, and it's one that carries serious consequences. What makes this even more frustrating is that much of the mainstream, access-driven media has avoided addressing the deeper basketball implications of this approach. But the reality is straightforward. Taking the ball out of Caitlin Clark's hands is not just questionable, it borders on basketball malpractice. When she is operating as the primary point guard, she creates a level of offensive gravity that completely distorts opposing defenses. Teams are forced to pick her up far beyond the three-point line, sometimes 30 feet from the basket, simply because of her shooting range and playmaking threat. That pressure doesn't just affect her defender, it collapses entire defensive schemes. It opens driving lanes for forwards, creates easy scoring opportunities in the paint, and generates wide open perimeter looks for teammates like Kelsey Mitchell. That is the foundation of the Fever's offensive identity. But the moment you move Clark off the ball, you are voluntarily removing that gravitational force. You are taking away the single most dangerous and efficient weapon the offense has. And today's fans are not blind to that reality. They study the numbers, they understand the data, And they can see that the team's offensive efficiency drops when Clark is used as a traditional off-ball shooter instead of a primary creator. So when they hear the head coach publicly outlining a system that leans in that direction, it doesn't come across as experimentation. It feels like a direct mismanagement of the team's greatest strength. And that is why the reaction has been so intense, because to many fans, this doesn't just look like a tactical mistake. It looks like a self-inflicted limitation on a generational talent.
At small forward and push, that boring brand of hack and grind basketball everybody hates. Oh, God. The Indiana Fever are getting smashed. That's crazy. I mean, woo-wee. I cannot believe.
So how does the Indiana Fever fix a situation that has spiraled this far, this fast? The truth is, the solution isn't complicated, it's just uncomfortable. This isn't about rolling out new marketing campaigns, flashy promotions, or discount packages to win people back. None of that addresses the core issue. What this franchise needs right now is absolute, undeniable transparency and accountability. Stephanie White needs to step in front of the media before the season begins, look directly into the cameras, and deliver one clear, definitive message. Caitlin Clark is our point guard. That's it. No qualifiers, no vague language, no corporate phrasing about versatility or shared responsibilities. No talk about being on ball one possession and off ball the next. Just a firm, unmistakable declaration that the franchise player is, in fact, the centerpiece of the franchise, and that the entire offensive system will be built around her once-in-a-generation talent. Because right now, the silence surrounding that exact question is deafening, and in today's media environment, silence doesn't calm a situation, it amplifies it. The longer this organization avoids giving a direct answer, the more frustration builds, the louder the backlash becomes, and the more financial pressure begins to mount. The Fever opened the 2026 season on May 9th, and with training camp right around the corner, the window to control this narrative is rapidly closing. Somewhere between now and tip-off, this franchise has to make a decision about its identity. 1. Are they going to fully commit to being a championship contender built around the most dynamic and marketable offensive force the league has ever seen? Or are they going to operate as a system-driven, overcoached structure where roles are constantly shifting, ball handling is diluted, and their biggest star is subtly pushed to the side in the name of balance? Because those are two completely different paths, and they lead to very different outcomes. The fans, meanwhile, have already made their position clear. They are choosing Clark. The real question now is whether the front office is willing to do the same, or whether they are going to double down on a direction that risks alienating the very audience that revived this franchise in the first place. 1. Court Central will be watching every development closely, from ticket sales and attendance trends to press conference statements and on-court rotations, to break down exactly how this situation unfolds. This is where the business of basketball meets reality, and if you appreciate this kind of deep, unfiltered, analytical perspective, the kind that most mainstream outlets avoid, you already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and become part of a community that values truth over narratives. Now I want to hear from you. Are you seriously considering boycotting Fever games this season? Do you think the front office will step back, reassess, and correct course? Or are they going to push forward and risk everything just to defend their current approach? Drop your most honest, unfiltered opinion in the comments. I want a real debate. And make sure notifications are turned on, because if this situation continues on its current path, the financial and competitive fallout is only just beginning. Stay locked in.